All right, today we're going to try and untangle one of the most complex economic situations in the world right now. What's going on inside Pakistan? It's a really tangled story of debt, politics, and how it all comes crashing down on millions of everyday people. So let's get right into it.
I want to start with just this one number, $130 billion. Now, that's not the valuation of some new tech giant. No, that's the staggering amount of external debt that Pakistan owes the rest of the world. It's like a giant anchor, just weighing down the entire economy. And that right there brings us to our first major theme, just the sheer size of this debt mountain. Seriously, if you can wrap your head around this, everything else that's happening starts to make a lot more sense.
Look, this isn't some brand new problem, but it has absolutely reached a boiling point. A debt this huge isn't just a number on a government spreadsheet. It dictates national policy, it suffocates any chance of real growth, and it creates this constant state of panic for the government.
And the pressure right now is just immense. Just to keep the lights on and avoid a full-blown default, Pakistan has to come up with over $23 billion, and that's just for the next fiscal year. And let's be clear, that money isn't for building new schools or hospitals, it's just for debt servicing. Basically paying the interest and the minimums on the loans it already has.
And here's the kicker, the real paradox. To pay off all that old debt, the country is taking on record amounts of new debt. Sure, you've got friendly nations like China rolling over some loans, which helps for a minute, but it doesn't fix the fundamental issue. It's literally like using one credit card to pay off another. Your total debt just keeps going up and up.
Okay, so these are huge, mind-boggling government numbers. But what does it actually mean for the average person? How does this national crisis actually feel? Well, it has a very real and very painful cost for millions of Pakistanis.
This number says it all. 38%. That's inflation. It's one of the highest rates in all of Asia. Just try to imagine that for a second. The money you earned last year is now worth almost 40% less. It's a brutal gut punch to living standards, and it's making basic things, food, fuel, just unaffordable.
And a huge reason for that runaway inflation is the currency just collapsing. The value of the Pakistani rupee has absolutely plummeted. A couple of years back, $1 US got to around 178 rupees. Today, it's over 300. And since Pakistan has to import essentials like fuel and cooking oil, a weaker currency means higher prices for absolutely everyone.
And this right here, this is the engine driving that weakness. The country is spending almost $38 billion on things it brings in from other countries, but it's only earning $22 billion from the stuff it sells. That gap, that trade deficit, means there's this constant pressure pushing the value of the rupee down, which just keeps feeding the inflation fire. It's a truly vicious cycle.
So you have to ask the question, right? Why does the country need to borrow so much money in the first place? Well, to get that answer, we've got to look at its own internal finances, which honestly you can think of as a giant fiscally leaky bucket.
So one of the biggest leaks is on the income side. The government just struggles to collect enough taxes. Only a tiny fraction of the population actually pays income tax. So what does the state do? It has to rely on indirect taxes, taxes on goods and services, and that disproportionately hammers the poor, who spend a much bigger part of their income on just the basic necessities.
Now take a look at this number, 851 billion rupees. That is an enormous amount of public money. So where did it go? You'd hope new roads, maybe better schools, more hospitals, right? Nope. That was the combined loss from inefficient state-owned companies in just 1 year. So instead of adding money to the national budget, these companies are a massive drain, just burning through cash that the country desperately needs.
And this brings us to the really tough choices you see at the heart of the budget. While critical areas like health and education are just chronically underfunded, the defense budget keeps growing. It's projected at over 2 trillion rupees. These are the fiscal decisions that are quite literally shaping the nation's future.
Of course, you can't talk about the money without talking about the politics. These economic problems don't just happen in a bubble. They are deeply tangled up with the country's political instability, which just creates this cycle of stalled progress.
I mean, just think about it. When you have governments changing constantly and these deep, bitter political divides, it becomes almost impossible to pass the kind of difficult, long-term reforms you need to actually fix the economy. That chaos scares away investors, it weakens public institutions, and it even stalls huge international projects.
So where does this all lead? Well, when the country gets to the brink of collapse, it repeatedly turns to one place for help. But this so-called solution has become part of the problem itself, part of a very painful, repeating cycle.
And this right here gets to the heart of what you could call the bailout paradox. So Pakistan gets these emergency loans from the IMF, right? But that money comes with major strings attached, what's known as austerity. The government is forced to slash subsidies, hike taxes, and raise the price of things like electricity. But those exact actions hit the public so hard that they spark protests, which destabilizes the government, which then makes it impossible to fix the economy, which, you guessed it, leads right back to needing another bailout.
And that leaves us with the fundamental question here. When you have this mountain of debt, crushing inflation, a leaky government budget, and political paralysis all feeding into each other, can another short-term fix, another bailout, ever truly break the cycle? That's the question that Pakistan and the rest of the world is still struggling to answer.